cry, baby, you don't belong here." The insult cut through the quiet suburban air like a whip against steel. A woman with platinum hair stood at the wrought iron gates of the mansion, her manicured fingers stabbing toward the man before her. Laughter erupted on either side. 3 uniformed guards in navy shirts and black tactical vests doubled over, grinning, egging her on. Their jeers bounced off the stone pillars like echoes in a courtroom. At the center of it all, he stood unmoved. 6'3", broad-shouldered, dressed simply in a gray, sleeveless shirt and dark joggers. His posture was carved from granite, his silence louder than their noise. He didn't flinch. He didn't step back. He let their words hang heavy in the humid morning air. One of the guards slapped his thigh, tears of laughter in his eyes. "Look at him, trying to act tough. This isn't your neighborhood, man." Another chimed in. "Yeah, keep walking before we call the cops." Their voices rose in a chorus of arrogance, each insult sharper than the last. The woman leaned closer, her voice dripping with venom. "You think money gives you access? Not here. Turn around." Behind the iron gates, the driveway stretched long and perfect, lined with trimmed hedges and marble fountains. It was the picture of wealth, of permanence. And yet here, at its threshold, the very man who built it stood accused of being an intruder. The guards shifted their weight, emboldened by each other's laughter. Their hands hovered near their radios, one tapping his baton against his thigh. The air thickened, charged, as if the earth itself recognized the injustice playing out. He breathed once, deep and deliberate, chest rising slow. Not a word escaped his lips. He had heard these tones before at airports, at boardrooms, at other gates where people decided who did or did not belong. It was never about credentials. It was about the color of his skin, the cut of his clothes, the assumptions in their eyes. But here, at his own mansion, it cut deeper. A car slowed on the street. A jogger paused on the sidewalk, pulling out a phone, eyes widening at the scene unfolding. Already, the first lens turned toward him, documenting the humiliation. The crowd was forming. The witnesses were gathering. The woman laughed again, shrill and cruel. "Don't just stand there. Say something!" But he didn't. He refused to give her his anger. His silence was a shield, a warning, a weight pressing down on everyone present. And before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to Elijah Grant. He shifted his gaze from the woman to the guards, steady, unblinking. One of them faltered under the stare, his smirk flickering. The laughter thinned, uncertain. Elijah still hadn't spoken. He didn't need to. The storm was coming, and when it broke, silence would be the loudest sound they'd ever hear. The black SUV purred as it idled outside the wrought iron gate. Dust clung faintly to its tires, souvenirs from miles of highway. Elijah Grant had driven through the night, straight from the airport, with only one thought: home. Not the 5-star hotels, not the boardrooms or private jets, just the quiet of his own estate, the long driveway shaded by cypress trees, the stillness of belonging. But to the guards and the woman blocking his path, he wasn't the owner. He was just another man in gym clothes behind tinted glass. His outfit was deliberate. Gray, sleeveless shirt, dark joggers, running shoes. No Rolex on his wrist, no tailored suit. The uniform of someone tired, human, unarmored. And to them, it read as outsider. The woman sneered at his silence. What, no words? Maybe he doesn't even speak English. Laughter broke out again from the guards. Their cruelty felt rehearsed, the same arrogance repackaged, delivered to anyone who didn't fit their mold. Inside the car, Elijah's hand rested on the steering wheel. His grip tightened, then eased. He had choices: blast the horn, shout, demand. Instead, he opened the door slowly, the creak of metal loud in the tension-soaked air. The guards straightened, but not in respect. One of them barked, "Step back. Don't make us drag you." Elijah stepped out. The morning sun caught the lines of his shoulders, the calm of his posture. He wasn't towering because of muscle. He was towering because he refused to bend. He reached into his pocket and drew out a slim leather wallet. From it, a card, sleek, metallic, embossed with his name. He held it out, steady, offering it like proof to men who had already decided he had none. One guard scoffed, refusing even to read it. "Fake. You can buy these online." He slapped the card back against Elijah's chest. The metallic click as it hit fabric rang louder than their laughter. The jogger on the sidewalk muttered, phone held high. "That's not fake. I know that name." His voice didn't carry far, but the lens caught it. A seed had been planted. The woman crossed her arms, smirking. "Big car, cheap clothes, fake card, story checks out." Her words dripped like poison, feeding the performance. But Elijah didn't take the bait. He tucked the card back into his wallet with the same care he'd taken pulling it out. Deliberate, unrushed. His silence was louder than their chorus. One of the guards stepped forward, hand brushing the baton on his belt. "Last warning. Leave before this gets ugly." Elijah looked at him, unblinking. The stare wasn't anger, it was a mirror. And in that mirror, the guard saw himself unraveling. Behind them, the iron gates gleamed. Behind the gates stood the mansion Elijah had built, the legacy he had carved, the empire that bore his name. And yet, he was still here, on the wrong side, treated like a trespasser. The jogger whispered into his phone, "This is going viral. They have no idea who they're dealing with." Elijah finally moved. Not a word, not a step forward, just a slow breath, as if gathering the weight of patience itself. The guards shifted again. But for the first time, unease flickered in their laughter. The storm hadn't arrived, but the air was heavy with its promise. The metallic clink of the rejected card still echoed when another guard stepped forward. His boots struck the pavement with heavy certainty, the swagger of someone who believed he was untouchable. He tilted his chin at Elijah, eyes narrowing. "License, registration, all of it," he demanded. "And don't tell me you don't have it." Elijah's jaw tightened, but he didn't move. His silence stretched, a rope drawn taut between them. The woman in the blazer laughed again, cruel and cutting. "Oh, this is rich. He probably doesn't even own the car he's driving." She circled slightly, her heels tapping against the stone, her voice carrying for the neighbors to hear. "Big talkers always fold when you press them." The jogger on the sidewalk muttered into his phone. "They're profiling him. You're watching it live." His live stream counter ticked upward, hearts and comments flooding the screen. Elijah slid his wallet back into his pocket with deliberate calm. He wasn't about to turn his life into evidence for people who had already judged him guilty. One of the guards tapped his radio. "Dispatch, we have a trespasser at the north gate, refusing to comply. Possible stolen vehicle." The words stung the air like sirens. Elijah's silence met them head-on, but the crowd around the gate shifted uneasily. Neighbors slowed their cars, some lowering windows, others pulling out phones to record. The performance was no longer private. It was spectacle. The second guard leaned closer, his voice dripping disdain. "You don't look like you belong here. I don't care what card you flash or what name you drop. You're not getting past this gate." The woman's laugh rose again, high and mocking. Trespasser in his own fairy tale. Elijah's gaze sharpened, steady and cold. Still, he spoke no word. His stillness was unnerving, an answer stronger than their noise. The first guard slapped the hood of the SUV, the sound ringing through the street. "You think silence is going to save you? Not today." From behind the gates, two more guards emerged, summoned by the radio call. They joined the others, forming a wall of uniforms, each face hardened, each stance aggressive. 5 against 1, the jogger's voice quivered as he narrated. "He's surrounded. 5 security guys," one woman shouting. "This is crazy." His audience swelled. Screenshots spread. The scene had become a stage for an audience far larger than the block itself. Elijah remained unmoved. He let their noise stack higher, brick by brick, insult by insult. He had seen walls like this before, and he knew walls crumble. The second guard stepped closer still, baton tapping against his palm. "Cooperate, or we'll take you out by force." Elijah inhaled once, slow and deliberate. His silence wasn't submission. It was the weight of a storm waiting to break. And the longer he held it, the more the air itself seemed to shift. The baton tapped against the guard's palm like a drumbeat daring Elijah to break. Each strike echoed into the charged morning air, a countdown everyone could feel. Neighbors whispered from across the street. The jogger's phone trembled as his audience climbed into the thousands. Yet in the center of it all, Elijah remained utterly still. He stood with his arms at his sides, shoulders relaxed, eyes steady. No raised voice, no flinch. Only the kind of calm that unsettles men who thrive on chaos. One guard spat at the ground. "What's the matter? Cat got your tongue?" He shifted his weight, frustrated that his threats weren't landing. The woman sneered, tilting her head, her blonde hair catching the light. Look at him. He thinks if he stares long enough, we'll believe him. Pathetic. Her voice cracked sharp, trying to fill the silence Elijah had claimed. But silence has a way of bending the room. The guards shuffled slightly, their earlier laughter fading into something tighter, more brittle. The jogger's commentary whispered through the live stream, "He's not even talking back, he's just standing there, like he owns the place." Elijah's eyes locked on the first guard, the one who had slapped the hood of his SUV. The man tried to hold the gaze, but seconds stretched like hours. His smirk faltered. He glanced away, then quickly back, embarrassed by the crack in his armor. The baton-tapping guard grew louder, angrier. "You're one step away from being cuffed, you hear me?" He waved his radio as though proof of power could fill the silence. Elijah didn't blink. His breath was steady, measured, deliberate. The kind of breath a man takes when he's already won and is just waiting for the world to notice. The woman's laughter wavered. "Why isn't he saying anything?" she muttered, too low for the crowd but caught by a microphone on the jogger's phone. The live stream chat exploded. "Because he doesn't need to. That's power. Wait for it." Another guard pulled at his collar. Suddenly too hot in the morning Sunday, the longer Elijah stayed silent, the more the tension shifted. It was no longer a mob mocking a stranger, it was a mob realizing they were being watched, documented, judged. The jogger whispered into his stream, "He hasn't moved in minutes. They look more nervous than him now." Elijah's eyes swept across the group, one by one, steady and piercing. Not anger, not fear, just truth, reflected back at them. And for the first time since the shouting began, the laughter stopped. The gates behind them stood tall, black iron against blue sky. The mansion beyond, glimmering in the Sunday, everything they claimed he didn't belong to, waited just past their shoulders. And yet his presence, silent, immovable, was already reclaiming it. The storm had not broken, but its shadow fell heavy across the guards, and they felt it in their bones. The crowd at the gate thickened. A neighbor, jogging in a bright red tracksuit, slowed to a stop, sweat dripping from his brow. At first he'd only meant to catch his breath, but the sight froze him, 5 guards circling one man, a woman jeering loud enough to rattle glass. His eyes narrowed. Something was wrong. He lifted his phone, thumb trembling as he tapped record. A small red light blinked to life. Instantly, the world outside this street was invited in. The guards didn't notice him yet. They were too focused on their target, feeding off each other's bravado. One barked again, "Move along before we put you in cuffs." Another muttered, "I'll call the cops now." The jogger whispered into his camera, voice shaky but clear. "I live here. I know this neighborhood, and I know that man's name." His words caught in the mic, carried out to an audience he didn't yet realize was growing. Elijah still hadn't spoken. His stillness was magnetic, pulling phones from pockets, drawing eyes from passing cars. A couple paused their dog walk across the street, whispering, then raising their phones too. One by one, more lenses turned toward the standoff. The woman finally spotted the jogger. She hissed at him, "Mind your business." Her voice cracked, shrill, more desperate than commanding. But the jogger didn't flinch. He angled his phone higher, catching her face full in frame. "The world deserves to see this," he said softly, almost to himself. The live stream counter ticked upward hundreds, then thousands. Comments flooded. "Who is he? This looks bad. Why aren't they letting him in?" One guard noticed the growing audience and stiffened. "Stop filming," he barked. But the command fell flat, drowned beneath the weight of too many witnesses. The jogger didn't lower his phone. Neither did the couple with the dog. Neither did the neighbor leaning out of her car window now, camera rolling. The guards exchanged nervous glances. Their stage had turned into a spotlight, and the performance no longer belonged to them. Elijah shifted his stance, only slightly, but enough to reclaim the center of the frame. Calm, composed. He hadn't raised his voice, yet somehow he owned every angle of every recording. The jogger narrated again, louder this time. "They're calling him a trespasser, but I've seen his face before. He belongs here more than any of them." The chat exploded. "Wait, is he the owner? They don't know who they're messing with. This is about to flip." The woman's smirk faltered. The guard's confidence cracked. The laughter that had filled the air minutes earlier was gone, replaced by murmurs, by the collective hum of unease. The witness had arrived. And with him, the truth began to find its voice. The first guard's radio crackled, static slicing through the thick air. A clipped voice barked from the other end. "North gate check status?" The guard pressed the button. Trespasser resisting. He turned his eyes on Elijah, smirking as if the word itself gave him power. "Send backup." Moments later, the iron gate buzzed and swung open just enough for two more guards to slip through. Heavy boots struck pavement. They were bigger, bulkier, their uniforms crisp, radios strapped tight across their chests. One carried a flashlight, though the sun was already bright. The other gripped his baton with knuckles white. Now there were 7 in total. A half-circle closing in, uniforms merging into a wall of hostility. The jogger whispered into his live stream, "More just showed up. They've surrounded him now." The number on his screen ticked higher, comments flooding. "This is insane. Why so many guards for one man?" "Stay calm, brother." The woman clapped her hands like a ringmaster. "Finally, let's end this show. He doesn't belong here." Her voice carried, sharp and grating, but even she sounded less certain now. Elijah didn't flinch. He adjusted his stance, feet planted firmly, his broad shoulders squared. The calm in his body contrasted so sharply with the chaos around him that even the new guards hesitated. One of them sneered, masking his unease. "ID, now, last chance." His baton tapped against his thigh. "Or we'll handle this our way." Elijah's eyes moved slowly across the line of uniforms. He gave each man a moment of his gaze, steady, unbroken. With every second, their bravado shrank. The silence pressed heavier than words ever could. The jogger's voice shook as he narrated to thousands. "Look at him. He hasn't said a word. And yet they're the ones sweating." The couple with the dog inched closer, their phones raised. A car pulled to the curb, window rolling down, camera pointed directly at the scene. The street had become an amphitheater. The guards, once in control, now stood as defendants before a growing jury. The woman's lips tightened. She snapped at the new guards. "Why are you just standing there? Do something!" But her shrill command only highlighted the shift. The longer Elijah held his silence, the more her authority cracked. One guard muttered under his breath, audible only to those nearest, "What if he's telling the truth?" The question hung like a stone in water, rippling through their certainty. The baton-tapping guard shot him a glare. "Shut up! He's bluffing!" But the crowd wasn't so sure anymore. Neither were the guards. Elijah inhaled once, slow, steady, grounding himself. His patience was not weakness, it was weight, and that weight was bending the scene around him, pulling it toward an inevitable collapse. The storm was almost here, and the men who thought they were in control had no idea they were standing at its eye. The tension snapped like a wire pulled too tight. One of the guards, jaw clenched, stepped forward and slammed his palm against the hood of Elijah's SUV. The metallic thud echoed through the neighborhood, sharp enough to make a dog bark down the street. "You think we're playing?" he barked. "Step out of the car, now." Elijah had already stepped out minutes earlier, but the order wasn't about action. It was about dominance, about stripping dignity. The guard shoved a finger toward him, voice booming. "You're trespassing. Either you move, or we move you." The woman's eyes gleamed with malice. She leaned in, her words venomous. "Drag him out if you have to. He doesn't live here. He never could." Ugh. Another guard lifted his radio again, pressing the button harder than necessary. "Dispatch, send police backup. Possible suspect, refusing to comply at the north gate." The words carried down the block, amplified by the jogger's live stream mic. Thousands of viewers heard it instantly. "Possible suspect." The chat erupted. "They're lying. We see the video, he's calm. This is racial profiling live." Elijah didn't react. He didn't plead. His silence was heavier now, layered with history. The kind of silence that carried the weight of 1,000 other moments, airport checkpoints, luxury stores, parking lots, all the places he'd been told he didn't belong. The guard closest to him gripped his baton with both hands, raising it slightly as though intimidation alone could force submission. "Last warning," he growled. "Leave, or you're going down." The jogger's voice shook. "They're threatening him. This is unreal." His audience count exploded. Tens of thousands now. The couple with the dog gasped, the leash tightening as the animal whined. A car horn honked as another neighbor slowed to film. The stage was complete, and every angle was being broadcast to the world. Elijah's eyes lifted slowly, locking onto the guard with the raised baton. Calm, unwavering, the kind of gaze that doesn't argue, it convicts. The guard faltered, just for a second, then recovered with louder threats, but his voice cracked at the edges, betraying the crack in his armor. The woman tried to fill the gap, shouting louder, "Call the cops! Call the owner! Whoever he is, he'll tell you this man doesn't belong." The irony hung in the air like smoke. Cameras caught every word. Livestream comments flared. "Wait until they find out. He is the owner. This is about to flip." Elijah didn't move, didn't blink. His silence was no longer passive. It was deliberate, sharpened, weaponized. The baton hovered, the radios crackled, the insults rang. And still, Elijah stood in the eye of the storm, unshaken. The guards thought they were pushing him back. They didn't realize they were walking themselves to the edge. The radios still crackled with the word suspect when Elijah finally shifted. Slow, deliberate, like a man unbothered by their noise. His hand slid into his pocket, not rushed, not defensive, calm. When it emerged, a sleek black phone gleamed in his grip. The guards stiffened, mistaking motion for defiance. One barked, "Put that away." Another muttered, "Don't try anything." But Elijah wasn't trying anything. He was beginning everything. He lifted the phone to his ear, voice low but firm, the kind that slices through chaos without needing to rise. "Nia." The line clicked instantly. "Standing by," a woman's voice answered. Crisp, professional. The jogger's live stream caught it. Microphone close enough to broadcast every syllable. The chat erupted. "He's making a call. Who's Nia? This is it." The woman at the gate scoffed, trying to reassert control. "What? Calling your girlfriend? She can't help you here." Her laugh was brittle now, the confidence fraying. Elijah's eyes didn't leave the guards. "Timestamp this call," he said evenly. "Activate incident logging. Video, audio, all channels. Mark North Gate, priority 1. Nia's reply came back steady, professional. "Confirmed. Internal systems engaged. Recording live." The words rippled through the group. The guards exchanged uneasy glances. Internal systems? Recording? What did he mean? The baton-wielding guard snapped louder, his voice breaking. "Quit bluffing. That means nothing." But his badge suddenly buzzed at his chest, a faint vibration he couldn't explain. His eyes darted downward, confusion flickering before he masked it with a scowl. Elijah took another calm breath. "Escalate to operations. Prepare for ownership verification." "Yes, sir," Nia replied, her voice sharp, clipped. "Standing by for override." The crowd murmured. Phones zoomed in. Guests who had only slowed now stopped fully, stepping closer to catch every word. The live stream counter shot higher. The woman's smirk collapsed into a frown. "He's bluffing," she muttered, though her tone lacked conviction. The jogger spoke into his stream, his voice steadier now. "That doesn't sound like a bluff. That sounds like authority." The guards shuffled. They had muscle, radios, threats. But what he had was heavier, something unseen, yet undeniable. Elijah lowered the phone just enough to let his next words cut through the air. "Every insult you've spoken, every false report, logged, permanent." His eyes swept across them, calm and merciless. "You can't erase this." The baton slipped an inch in the guard's grip. For the first time, the circle of uniforms felt less like power and more like defendants on trial. Elijah hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't moved more than a breath. But the storm had begun to turn. And for the guards at the gate, the first cracks in their authority had already appeared. The word override lingered in the humid morning air like smoke curling from a fire. The guards, once loud with jeers, stood restless now, their uniforms suddenly feeling heavier on their shoulders. Phones pointed from every angle. The jogger's live stream counter blinked tens of thousands watching, waiting. Elijah lowered his phone. For the first time since the ordeal began, he chose words. "You keep calling me a trespasser," he said, his voice steady as stone. His gaze cut across the line of uniforms, landing finally on the woman who had led the charge. "But the truth is, this is my house, my gate, my payroll." The silence that followed was seismic. For a second, even the cicadas in the trees seemed to pause. The woman blinked, her smirk crumbling into confusion. What did you say?" Elijah stepped forward, the pavement echoing under his sneakers. Each step was deliberate, unhurried, like a gavel striking wood. "You called the police on the man who signs your checks. You blocked the driveway of the man who built this estate. You laughed at the owner of everything behind this gate." Gasps rippled through the crowd. The jogger's voice trembled as he spoke into his mic. "He owns it. He's the owner." His comments flooded instantly. "No way. This just flipped. Power move." One guard's baton lowered to his side, arm suddenly weak. Another's radio slipped from his grip, clattering against the asphalt. Their faces drained of color as the weight of his words sank in. Elijah's eyes swept them once more, calm but merciless. "You thought silence was weakness. It was patience. And patience has no mercy when justice arrives." The woman shook her head, desperate, clinging to denial. "You're lying. If you owned this place, they would have told us." But her words rang hollow. No one echoed her now. Even her allies felt the ground shifting beneath them. Elijah raised his phone again, tapping once. "Nia." Her voice returned, clear through the speaker. "Yes, Mr. Grant." "Verify ownership," Elijah ordered. A beat. Then, "Ownership confirmed. Elijah Grant, founder, CEO, primary shareholder, full control Havenwood Estate and security operations." The declaration thundered through the street. Phones caught every syllable, every stunned expression. The live-stream chat erupted. "Verified. CEO. This is legendary." The guards froze. Their radios, their batons, their numbers, none of it mattered anymore. Authority had shifted, completely and irreversibly. Elijah's gaze lingered on them, then sharpened on the woman. "You tried to make me small at my own gate. You turned humiliation into a weapon, but you aimed it at the wrong man." The crowd gasped again. The live stream spiked higher, and in that moment, the question was no longer if he belonged. It was whether they would survive the consequences of forgetting who he was. For a long, suspended beat, no one spoke. The only sound was the faint hum of the SUV's engine and the collective inhale of a neighborhood realizing it had misjudged everything. Then the silence fractured. A neighbor clapped once, sharp against the air. Another joined, then another, until the sidewalk rippled with applause. Phones angled higher, capturing every frame. Elijah standing tall, the guards shrinking, the woman paling under the weight of revelation. The jogger whispered into his mic, voice trembling with awe. "You're watching this live. The man they called a trespasser is the owner. He's the CEO. This is history." His chat detonated. "Respect. Legend. Instant karma." And Gregory, the lead guard who had slammed the SUV, stared at his badge as if it might explain away his mistake. His fingers fumbled with the clip, sweat beading along his forehead. His smirk was gone, replaced by something hollow. The baton-wielding guard lowered his weapon entirely, ashamed eyes darting to the ground. His voice, once booming with threat, cracked to a whisper. We didn't know." But ignorance wasn't armor anymore. The woman, once so loud, now shook her head in disbelief. "This isn't real. This isn't possible." She turned as though looking for allies, but found none. Even the guards she had riled up stood frozen, their loyalty crumbling. Behind her, two staff exchanged glances of dread. One muttered under his breath, "We're finished." Elijah hadn't moved. He didn't need to. The weight of the truth did all the work for him. His stillness now radiated not just patience, but dominion. The crowd swelled with energy, cheers, gasps, the clatter of car doors as more neighbors pulled over to film. A teenager shouted, "This is going viral." Another added, "They're done, fired on the spot." And in a way, they already were. Elijah's phone buzzed faintly in his hand. A message from Nia flashed across the screen. "System ready for termination orders." He didn't look at it yet. His eyes stayed on the woman and the guards, watching the collapse unfold in real time. The jogger's voice broke through again, trembling but resolute. "You see it. You all see it. They tried to strip him of his dignity, but the truth just stripped them instead." Applause grew louder. Some whistled, others chanted his name. The street that had been a stage for humiliation was now an arena of vindication. The guards stood like statues caught mid-crumble. Their confidence had vanished. Their uniforms no longer armor but evidence. And in that charged silence, one truth was undeniable. The power had shifted, irrevocably. The applause rolled through the street like thunder, but Elijah lifted a hand and, almost instinctively, the noise softened. Phones still hovered in the air. Red recording lights still blinked like dozens of watchful eyes. But the world seemed to hold its breath, waiting for what he would do next. Elijah raised the phone once more. His voice was calm, crisp. "Nia." "Yes, Mr. Grant," came the instant reply, amplified enough by the jogger's microphone that the crowd heard every syllable. "Terminate their contracts," Elijah said. Each word fell like a gavel. "Effective immediately. Revoke all security clearance. Disable credentials now." The line crackled. "Confirmed. Executing termination protocol." The guards shifted uneasily. Gregory, the lead, forced a laugh that sounded more like a cough. "You can't." But then his badge buzzed against his chest. A red light blinked once, then went dark. The scanner by the gate chirped, a sharp denial tone, his access gone. Lauren, the baton-wielding guard, fumbled at his belt as his own badge lit red, then lifeless. Another's radio hissed static before cutting to silence. One by one, the tools of their supposed authority dissolved in their hands. Gasps erupted from the crowd. The jogger whispered in awe, "It's happening live. He's firing them right here, right now." The comments on his stream exploded. "Iconic. That's power. Silent justice." Gregory's face drained of color. "This is a mistake. You can't just—" Elijah cut him off, voice like iron. "I can. And I did." The woman at the gate stumbled back a step. "Please," she stammered. "We didn't know. We were just—" Elijah's gaze fixed on her, steady and merciless. "You laughed. You mocked. You called the police on the man who owns this ground. Ignorance isn't an excuse. It's an indictment." "Huh." Her words shriveled in her throat. She had no defense. The guards stood stripped, their uniforms no longer armor but costumes, emptied of power. The badges that once granted them access now glowed with a single red denial light, like scarlet letters branding their downfall. Applause surged again. Neighbors cheered. Some whistled. A man shouted, "That's justice!" Phones tilted upward, capturing Elijah's unshaken composure, the image of dignity reclaiming its ground. Gregory's knees wobbled. His hand hovered near his badge as though he could will it back to life. But the silence of the dead scanner told him what everyone else already knew. His reign of arrogance was over. Elijah lowered his phone. His final words to them were simple, precise. "You're finished." The crowd roared. And for the guards who once laughed at him, the verdict was inescapable. The street had transformed. Where once there had been jeers and mockery, now there was applause and the steady hum of dozens of phones capturing history. The guards stood stripped of power, their badges dark, their authority dissolved in real time. The woman who had led the charge clutched her bag tightly, her bravado gone, her eyes wide with fear. But Elijah didn't look at them anymore. They were finished. He turned toward the gate, the iron bars glinting in the morning Sunday. Slowly, deliberately, he began to walk. Each step echoed against the pavement, calm and measured, the walk of a man who no longer needed to prove anything. The crowd parted instinctively, a corridor forming on the sidewalk as neighbors and bystanders stepped aside. Some still clapped, others whispered, but all of them lifted their phones higher, making sure to capture the moment. Elijah Grant, the man they had watched endure insult after insult, reclaiming his place with unshaken dignity. The jogger's live stream voice cracked with emotion. "You're watching the moment justice became real. No shouting, no fists, just truth, just presence." His comments overflowed. "This gave me chills. Black excellence. Respect." At the gate, the scanner chirped once, then glowed green. The iron bars slid open with a slow mechanical groan, revealing the sweeping driveway beyond. Fountains sparkled in the distance, the mansion rising in full view, his creation, his legacy, his home. Elijah paused at the threshold. Behind him, the guards shuffled in disgrace, the woman trembling. Before him, the crowd held its breath, waiting for one last word. He turned slightly, his gaze sweeping across the cameras, the witnesses, the fallen. His voice was low, steady, each syllable carrying like thunder. "Respect isn't optional. It's the foundation." The words dropped into the air like a final gavel, sealing the judgment. Then he stepped forward, crossing the threshold. The gates slid shut behind him, the bars clanging into place. Outside, the crowd erupted in cheers, their voices rising like a tide, echoing across the neighborhood. The live stream counter spiked again, tens of thousands watching the image of Elijah disappearing into his estate, calm, resolute, untouchable. He didn't turn back. He didn't need to. His silence had spoken. His truth had landed. His dignity had won. And for everyone who had witnessed it on that street, on that live stream, across the world, one message remained clear. Justice doesn't always shout. Sometimes, it simply walks through its own gate.